This is the story of one of the world's best-selling products and the town it helped to create. The arrival of a factory transformed a sleepy village by the Clyde into an industrial powerhouse.
I don't think you realised the enormity.
I was probably about a mile to a mile and a half from one end to another.
The village grew into a town called Clydebank, with a strong community in it.
There's something about just being a bankie. I'm a woman, I'm a this, I'm a that, and I'm a bankie.
Picture houses, dance halls.
It was a whole new landscape.
The factory made a product that the world couldn't get enough of. The Singer sewing machine.
And that changed the world as we knew it.
1 in 5 households in the world had got a Singer sewing machine.
You would say, oh, I'd like to buy a new Singer, and the Singer man would go, well, wouldn't we all, madam, wouldn't we all?
Even today, the sewing machines made in Clydebank work hard around the world, keeping the Singer name alive.
Having a sewing machine is going to change my life big time.
It has associations with my grandmother, my mother.
I always call him my old boy, and I love my machine, I really do.
Literally, I mean, some of them have lasted 100 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your company apologies and the wonderful Mark Jerry!
Yes, hello Glasgow, make some noise! I'm from not far away from here. I'm from Clydebank. Clydebank. It's quite my fame if you don't know anything about Clydebank, right? So it was bombed by the Germans in World War II. Yeah, walking the streets of Clydebank today would be forgiven for thinking the Second World War took place sometime in the last fortnight.
Comedian Mark Jennings has lived in Clydebank all his life.
What it means to be a bankie is there is a sense of belonging in a sense that, well, we've got this proud history of surviving the Blitz in the Second World War, and then, you know, this proud history of building these ships that, you know, went all around the world, and having the Singer sewing factory that built these, you know, sewing machines that again went all around the world, and just a real sense of pride and important place for the whole world, basically. So this is where, like, the Singer factory used to be, and this is the Clydebank business park now, so it's like call centres and stuff like that, and this is what it's looked like basically the whole time that I've been alive. And apparently the factory had like a big clock, and so when the factory got took away, my gran was telling me, she's like, oh, you know, son, we didn't really have the watches and the phones and all that you've got these days, so we didn't know what time it was. I was like the idea of these people in Clydebank, once they took away the clock, just walking about like, oh, do you have any idea of the time now? Is it 3:15 or is it 2:10? I don't know.
Oh, the clock was massive. The clock was, you could see it from miles away. It set you off in your day and ended your day for you. It was never, ever out of time.
The Singer clock was a huge boot. It was 26 feet in diameter.
It was a massive, great big square tower, and it had an enormous face, four faces actually, all the way around.
And it had the Singer name on each side, and it was lit up at night.
And great big long hands.
The minute hand was 13 foot 6 long, and I think the smaller hand was about 8 foot odd long.
Well, when you were going in the morning, you were watching that clock like a hawk.
To see if you were getting the right time for your bus and wherever you were going, if you were going to be in time for the movie in the cinema. It was something special.
That was Singer's, and you just thought it was going to be there forever.
Singer Sewing Machine Company was the brainchild of an eccentric American inventor, Isaac Singer.
Isaac Merritt Singer was the son of a German immigrant. He grew up in America, grew up in New York. He invented the first, what we know as the first practical sewing machine, and they called it a sewing engine. And in 1851, he patented his first model, and that changed the world as we knew it.
Isaac Merritt Singer was a brilliant showman. He was very good at selling the sewing machine. He opened up fantastic big plush showrooms in major cities in America. He would take it to fairs, circuses, and he was very much aware he had to persuade not just manufacturers to adopt the sewing machine, but the buying public that machine sewn goods were as good as, if not better, than hand sewn goods.
Forever, people had hand-stitched every single item of cloth together. So along comes this machine which supposedly joins it for you, and nobody really believed it. So they used to put on public shows, and you could pay in New York on Broadway 10 cents to go and see this show, and people would be, "Ooh, this is amazing." And that's how it all started.
He wasn't the only inventor. In fact, there were about 8 or 9 really important inventions. And so in the very early days of the industry, Isaac Singer, along with the other owners, they set up their own businesses, and the Singer story began to change in the 1870s. In the 1870s, several of these leading American companies began to realise that they could sell their sewing machines overseas. And the most obvious market to go and experiment in was the United Kingdom.
Singer's an American firm, and they decide to come and locate in Scotland. The manager, who was based in America, who made that decision, was actually Scottish, and he'd migrated there in the first place. So they first set up shop in Glasgow, in a location near Queen Street Station, right in the city centre. And they chose Glasgow because at that period you've got lots of migrant workers in the city, so a kind of cheap labour force.
At first, the Glasgow factory assembled the machines with parts imported from the United States. Though they made over 1,000 sewing machines a week, the factory couldn't keep up with the growing demand. It was clear they needed to move to a bigger place.
Singer sent out men to look all over Europe and find a place to build the perfect factory, and they came across this lovely little place in Kilbowie that had everything. It had the woods, it had the steel, it had the rails, had the Great River Clyde. It had everything they needed at that one spot.
Construction of the factory started in 1882 and was completed in 2 years. When it opened, the new Singer sewing machine factory was a state-of-the-art facility, largest of its kind in the world. And in pride of place was that iconic clock tower that could be seen for miles.
There's a brilliant map of 1861, and all that's in there is a train line, a canal, and the edge of the Clyde. And then if you look at the map in about 1891, all you can see this warren of streets and this enormous factory right in the middle of it. It literally changed the geography of the whole place.
With John Brown's shipyards already employing a huge number of people in the area, the new Singer factory attracted thousands more. The deluge of industry had inadvertently created a brand new town that came to be known as Clydebank.
By 1906, I believe there was 26,000 people in Clydebank. So Singer's factory was the catalyst for the community. They kind of created almost that local economy.
Clydebank's got a fish and chip shop that's actually a boat, and on this boat it's got a sign that says Fish and Chip Shop of the Year, and then in much tiny writing below it says runner-up 1997. You kind of need to be funny being from somewhere like here, you know, you either need to be funny or be able to fight or be good at football, so you know, I wasn't any of the other two, so you know, I was always trying to just make jokes and stuff to get by, and where you're from is a big part of comedy, and Clydebank's definitely something that influenced me in where I go.
Bankies, quite distinct from the Glaswegian, despite the nearness of one another.
When you go your holidays, you know yourself, people say, when you come from Scotland, Glasgow, you say, no, Clydebank, yeah, you're only about 6 miles away from Glasgow. But you always name the place you're born in.
Well, I was born in Clydebank in 1929, and the rest of my life I've been a bankie.
I would consider myself definitely a bankie, as if it's part of you, you know. I'm a woman, I'm a this, I'm a that, and I'm a bankie.
The bankie character has been moulded by his product. I'm rather proud of it.
So this is right next to Singer's train station, which is really the only kind of remnants of the Singer factory even being here, just the fact that the train station's called Singer, like, and if you're not from Clydebank, you probably wouldn't even know why it's called Singer, like, you'd just be like, oh, is this where Marty Pellow used to live or whatever, but yeah, that's like the only real thing that's left to show, you know, the history of the factory.
And one of the things about the Singer station was even the station platform was chock-a-block.
When you actually got on the train in the morning, the carriages were actually stuffed with people.
It was quite an experience because there were hundreds thrown into the factory.
Singer employed thousands, John Brown's employed thousands.
The streets were just dark with people. It was like football match coming out or in nowadays, you know.
It was a whole new landscape because you were meeting every day. There was such a lot of different people.
It was 20 minutes to 8, the horn went off, that's when you started work. So you had to be there by about 7:30 because you'd all these stairs to come down from Bowie Road.
If you were a minute late, they were taking 15 minutes off your wages.
The Singer factory was from one end to the other. It was probably about a mile to a mile and a half from one end to another.
It is enormous. One of the big surprises of the plant at Singer was just how widely spread it was.
Every department had to make different things for the sewing machine.
They didn't just supply the sewing machines, they supplied everything that went with it, from the threads to the attachments.
Needle bars, bobbins, hand wheels, treadles, cabinets.
There was 56 departments at the time.
Each department was numbered.
1 was the foundry, 4 department was the hardening, 5 department was the dry milling, I think it was.
And there was other departments where it was so dusty, all the dust was clogging you. It was like being in a smog. You know, you blew your nose and
6th department where I was the wet milling department. 7th department was the shuttle.
Very, very dirty jobs. In 55 department, we just made tiny wee parts for inside the machines, and your hands at the end, it would be all scalps and all mucky, and that was one of the bad jobs.
38th department was the electrical shop, 39 was the gauge shop, 41...
To give the machine its signature look, it was covered in a tough black gloss and then baked in a process called Japanning. The machine was then hand-finished with exquisite designs in gold leaf.
It was an important part, no matter what you were doing, and you were proud to be making a small part and to know that it was going to be a Singer sewing machine, and it was going to give somebody so much pleasure, and it was going to be sent all over the world.
Although it was widely revered as a technological marvel, the sewing machine didn't make it to people's homes straight away.
The sewing machine is synonymous with women and garment manufacture, but the initial sewing machine that Singer brought out in 1851, they were not interested in domestic sales, they were interested in manufacturers.
Isaac looked at the factories because if you could make, say, a hat or an overcoat in 2 days instead of 2 weeks, now that's a product you could sell to that factory and they would buy it. So factories were the first people who bought sewing machines, and they bought them 10 machines, 20 machines, 100 machines, 1,000 machines.
Their usefulness went beyond just garment manufacturing.
They could change the shell of the machine, the size of the machine, the bed of the machine, so they could actually adapt the machine to make all sorts of unusual shaped objects, for making shoes, things like that, gloves. And they were working this out along with the manufacturers.
At a bookbinding company in Glasgow, the industrial Singer sewing machines continue to uphold a centuries-old tradition.
Sewing and bookbinding hasn't changed since the book started, basically. Different types of books require different methods. So we have a Singer sewing machine which side sews a book. We have one that sews down the centre of the book, and we have one that sews pages together to form a section book. Too small a stitch and the pages become perforated. Too big a stitch, the pages become loose. So Singer is the ideal sewing machine for a book. The machines haven't developed much. Obviously the new machines now are more computerised, but basically they're all hand-operated, semi-automatic machines.
As well as restoring manuscripts and literary editions for museums and universities, the bookbinders work extensively with the Houses of Parliament and the British Library.
It's a testament to the people who produced the Singer sewing machines in Clydebank to build and produce such a robust machine that can still keep going.
The Singer sewing machines produced in the early 20th century were finely crafted. Constructed with cast iron and a combination of alloys, the machines were built to last.
The sewing machine that Singer designed, it was a really great piece of engineering. It's in a cast iron shell which is pretty much indestructible. So it has got this long life. That was what they were building in the 19th century. The idea of building in inbuilt obsolescence wasn't really something that they would have considered. Literally, some of them have lasted 100 years.
There was, however, one snag. The machines were tremendously expensive.
Sewing machines would have cost a typical worker at least half a year's salary to be able to pay for. So they developed an idea that was completely novel in the mid-1870s.
I've got a great idea. Why don't we give the customer the machine and let them pay us back over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years.
That's what enabled people to actually invest in the sewing machine, because they could just pay this small amount a week.
And the first year, the sales went from 5,000 machines to 25,000 machines. And every year after that, they were doubling.
And that was a complete game changer.
So hire purchase was invented by the Singer Company, and it changed the Singer Company beyond all recognition.
By 1918, at the end of the First World War, the Singer sewing machines were so popular that 1 in 5 households in the world had got a Singer sewing machine.
Singer's innovative hire purchase scheme and clever marketing made its sewing machine affordable and accessible to people all over the world. But they didn't just stop there. They took the sewing machine right to people's homes.
In the UK, that would go almost to every single house in the entire country and knock on the door and ask people if they would like to buy a sewing machine.
They They used beautiful women to advertise their products. They put them in the high street, sewing in shop windows. And this attracted the crowds. So they were very, very good at marketing.
This concentrated effort created an appetite for the Singer brand and put it ahead of its competitors for decades to come, beginning Singer's long reign at the top. They established factories all over the world, but Singer's Clydebank factory remained its largest in Europe.
You were never bored in Singers, never. You were always on the go. It was just heads down and into your work.
Well, it was a place that was very strict. You weren't allowed to go away and have a smoke or anything like that, but though they did in the fly.
The toilet was called the tinny, and because it had a corrugated iron roof, and that's where some of the folk went to hide from the gaffer and put in the rollers for the dancing, and some of them had a wee fly puff.
Well, my first job was actually as an office boy, and the first day you were just sort of finding your way about. And some of the places that you visited, where my sister worked, for instance, it was all females, and all these girls were shouting extremely rude remarks. And then this voice rang out, "That's my wee brother, leave him alone. He's a virgin and he's going to stay that way," which caused a great deal of hilarity. But some of these women, honest to goodness, if you shook hands with them, they could crush you to a pulp.
One of the things that I really liked about working in Singer was the friendships we made.
I'd gone for an interview and I'd met this girl waiting for an interview as well. Her name was Maureen.
It was the day of the interview when I met my friend Anna.
It turned out that we got sent up to the same department, and that was us. We were inseparable.
On my first day, we were quite excited, and I had to go to the toilet, and they told us you had to go down through the men's department where they assembled all the machines.
And when Maureen came back from the toilet, oh my goodness, you should have seen the state of her. Absolutely mortified, shaking like a leaf. So it was my turn to go, and then I realised why she was in the state she was in.
And of course, as soon as a female walked down the passageway towards the toilet, they all hammered on their benches.
With hammers, spanners, you name it, anything they could get hold of.
You've got both sides of it. Well, you can imagine, 17 years old, my face was like a bright red tomato.
But there was no way out because you had to come back that way as well.
One of the things that sort of peeved me even back in those days was that there was boys and the men as well. They were all being paid very much better than I was. Even then I felt there was a lot of unfairness, and we were always treated as if we were just sort of, second-class citizens in a way. And to make it worse, of course, I was a married woman, and there were a lot of people, and I include ladies in this as well, who thought I had no business to be holding on to a job, that someone else might be able to get this job who hadn't a husband to keep her. And I thought, well, I didn't get married to be kept.
The men, they always get paid more. Always, 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 and the girls weren't happy about that. They're still arguing about that 63 years later.
It was an issue that caused one of the biggest controversies at Singer's factory in Clydebank. Back in 1911, pushed to the brink by low wages and the threat of redundancies, women workers from the polishing department took a bold step against the management. They went on strike.
The Singer strike of 1911 is important because it was the women workers that sort of stood up against changes that were made. Redundancies were being made, and the women obviously took objection to this because you're asking a group of women to do the job of 10 rather than 7 people, saying, no, this isn't on. And it was the women that walked out, and the following day the whole factory came out in support, and obviously the management were not happy about this.
The women's strike of Singer set off a chain of events that eventually culminated in the most significant labour movement in Scotland, known as Red Clydeside.
Red Clyde side is often associated with male activism round the Clyde and trade union activism and the rent strikes of 1915 in Govan, but actually it started in Clydebank in 1911.
Threatened with the prospect of losing their jobs, the workers were forced to end the strike after a few weeks, and the management made sure none of the women who had started the strike came back to the factory. The strike, however, went on to have a lasting legacy and became a beacon for labour activism in Scotland.
It has become pretty symbolic in Scottish labour history as an incident of workers just sort of standing up for their rights and saying no, we're not going to take the cost-cutting measures.
The women's strike of 1911 was also instrumental in creating better working conditions at the Clydebank factory.
That's when Singer bring in provision of social clubs, sports clubs, the hockey club, the football club, all of those sorts of facilities that are provided, which I guess are quite paternalistic, basically to placate the workers, to keep them happy. So there'll be no more strike action if you feel like you're being looked after.
There was everything. They had football teams, tennis, bus runs, you name it, and they had it.
And of course they had the annual gala.
The Singer Gala Day was the highlight of the factory's social calendar.
One year, many years ago, Dorothy Lamour, who was a famous film star, came and opened the sports in the gala for us at Singer, which was quite a turnout in the town because at that point in time she was very famous in films with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. They had a lovely big playing field and there were races of all sorts. It was like a sports day in Gala.
High jumping and athletics.
And they used to have a queen.
And she always had sort of almost like bridesmaids, you know, like her attendants, and then she had an entourage as well. And all these girls had beautiful dresses made.
It was long dresses, 3/4 length gloves, very glamorous, and lovely flowers. It was like a rainbow. And then it was time for the Queen to be crowned, which was a great big thing in Clydebank. I think the whole of Clydebank were there.
The Singer Queen was selected by her beauty, and then all the other ones that didn't get chosen as Queen, they were her attendants.
I was fortunate enough to be picked, and I was a maid of honour. And I absolutely chuffed to bits with myself. And I know all my relatives from Glasgow were all through. You'd have thought I was the Queen, but they were all so proud, you know. It was just a very, very happy day, you know.
Clydebank had endured catastrophic destruction during the Blitz and was slowly getting back on its feet. At Singer's factory, machine manufacturing had been mothballed during the war to make munitions. So when the production lines started back up, it could barely sustain the backlog of orders.
You would say, oh, I'd like to buy a new Singer, and the Singer man would go, well, wouldn't we all, madam, wouldn't we all?
Singer's machines went worldwide, everywhere. In fact, you used to go down, if you went into the shipping shed down there, you would see the boxes with the names on it. Karachi, India, Turkey, Africa.
Singer's universal appeal was because of its reputation as a reliable, quality sewing machine.
The machines they were making, certainly in the early 20th century, beautifully engineered machines, you could get all the parts, you could service it, and manufacturers like using Singer machines, especially if they do very high quality products, because Singer make a really nice stitch and they still like that quality of stitch.
Singer's distinctive stitch earned it a devoted following among distinguished heritage tailors. In London's Savile Row, that loyalty has been passed down to a new generation.
Every single individual on this street has learnt their craft to the perfection. I mean, we've learnt from people that have done it for, you know, decades. The reason why we use the machine is because it's kind of a strong, straight stitch. They're quick, they're efficient, they're clean, and they're strong. My Singer sewing machine was originally my tutor Stefano's. He was doing it for 50 years, which means really he was passing on 50 years of skill to me. I was always fascinated by clothes at a young age. My dad was quite stylish, he had a few bespoke suits. I didn't really feel I could really say I was a tailor until I did 5 years. So that was a certain point in my career I thought, oh yeah, I like the way my coat looks now. Not perfect, but I liked it. I love my machine, I really do. I know it sounds really silly, but I hate using other machines. He's really, really slow and, you know, there's so much control with him. Some machines whiz off like a little puppy or something, but mine's like an old man. I always call him my old boy, and I do actually talk to him sometimes as well, if he's not doing what I want, so that's my old boy. I love how he looks, I love how he works, and I think I just always want singers around my life.
Clydebank was a thriving industrial powerhouse in the 1950s. It had come a long way from its origins as a small village by the Clyde. Singer Manufacturing Company and the world-renowned John Brown's shipyard collectively employed tens of thousands of people. The town flourished on the coattails of their success.
You tell me any other town in Scotland where you will find 2 golf courses, 7 municipal bowling greens, 3 public libraries, all that kind of thing. You find it in Clydebank and nowhere else in Scotland, I assure you.
Clydebank was buzzing. Buzzing.
Oh, well, it was great. There was always a wee dance on a Saturday night. And sometimes my father would take me to the pictures, the La Scala.
Picture houses, dance halls, anything you wanted, you had that in Clydebank. It was a fab place to stay.
And the pubs. I think the pubs did their roaring trade.
Singer's success was largely built on the loyalty of its female customers. The company had invested heavily over the years to nurture this relationship. From the moment it was first introduced, Singer knew that to get sewing machines into people's homes, it had to appeal to the lady of the house.
When they started to focus on domestic sales, they used to use women to demonstrate the sewing machine because that was their thinking. It's so easy, a woman can use it. Because the idea of a woman using a machine or taking a machine into the house was just unheard of.
Singer deployed various tactics, initially marketing the sewing machine as a time-saving device that would enable the woman to earn money, making it attractive to thousands of working-class families.
We know from diaries that were kept by housewives in the United States in the 1860s and 1870s, they would be spending the equivalent of 2 days a week on clothes manufacturing and clothes repair, hand stitching and other associated tasks. That's a lot of time. The sewing machine saved about 90% of that stitching time.
For the first time, you not only could sew for yourself, but you could make your next door neighbour's dress and charge her. So all of a sudden, the woman in the household could be earning her own money, and that was instrumental, really, in changing society.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Walter O'Keefe turning the microphone over to the cat. Take it away, Kitty.
Oh, John, I'm so discouraged. How can I ask anybody to this house the way the furniture looks?
Well, it is pretty awful. But I don't suppose we could buy much with our money.
Not unless a miracle happens.
Ah, there's the miracle. Hurry, 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 hurry. Answer that doorbell. But it's the Singer man.
For the women who didn't know how to sew, Singer offered them the opportunity to learn at one of its many sewing centres. It is estimated that by 1951, over 400,000 women were taught sewing at these centres.
Just a few simple lessons on the sewing machine and her house will look so attractive they'll probably sell it at a profit. Here he is in person. It's the Singer man.
Over the years, Singer fashioned itself as the neighbourhood-friendly brand that was there to help the woman every step of the way.
Everybody knew there was a Singer shop on the high street and people would go and buy it for their 21st or their wedding present.
The granny that used them, she's still alive to say, this is the machine I made your christening gown on. Never ever underestimate nostalgia. It's a powerful thing.
Keeping that nostalgia alive is textile artist Helen Paremba, who uses her traditional Singer sewing machines for more contemporary work.
I started sewing probably as a very young child with my grandmother on her old treadle sewing machine, and had my own hand-cranked Singer when I was 8, I think it was. The sense of nostalgia of the Singer sewing machine is because it's what I learned. It has associations with my grandmother, my mother.
Helen creates botanical designs using a technique called free motion embroidery.
I always like to work from the plant initially because I'm looking for shapes that I can then transfer to fabric to actually cut out. I find the pattern of the way plants grow really lend themselves to creating patterns in textile.
Once the drawing is complete, Helen uses the pattern to cut the shapes from the fabric.
I build a piece up in layers. I don't have a place for one before the other ones are completed, so I never know before it's done really what it's going to look like. I have, I think, currently 11 machines from 1881 through to 1960s. All the ones I have were made in Clydebank. So the one I use all the time is the 201K. It has a very fast stitch, which means when I'm using it to draw with, it's almost like the speed of using a pencil or a pen on paper. It's very smooth. It can just keep going forever and ever without a hitch. I like the process of actually moving the fabric. I suppose it's like drawing, where you hold the pencil still and somebody, you would move the paper. It can adapt itself in all sorts of different ways as an artist's tool. The Singer's slogan was to have a sewing machine in every home, and he just about did that. And I think everybody has that same kind of memory of, oh yes, my granny had one, or whatever. There's one in the cupboard still. It will just keep going forever.
For decades, Singer's relentless marketing and huge high street presence had kept competitors at bay. But as the Japanese and German industries recovered after the war, it became apparent their dominance was under threat.
Singer were the only people making sewing machines, and they had a monopoly on the market, so they didn't really have to worry about improving things. However, once the Japanese and the Italians and the other companies that were disabled during the war got themselves started up again, they started up with modern equipment, modern methods, they were cheaper, and Singer then suddenly found themselves in a marketplace under extreme pressure.
I don't think genuinely in the marketplace there is a real loyalty. I think when a new product comes onto the market that is as good or better and is cheaper, then people will automatically go for it. Competition started slowly at first. The Japanese didn't really get the sewing machines right to begin with, but when they started to get them right, they started to make them better and better and better, and they could produce exactly the same machine for approximately half the price. When you bought a Singer, you were buying the best. When you buy a Bentley, you're buying something special. If it's not special anymore, then why would you pay the money?
Clydebank was one of Singer's oldest manufacturing facilities and was in desperate need of investment.
What surprised me as a new graduate out of college was just how old-fashioned Singer was. The methods that they were using were the same that they'd been using in the times of the Industrial Revolution almost.
Machinery was old-fashioned. I mean, it was old-fashioned even for its time. And there were great big belts that sort of ran, that turned the wheels, that turned the things, that turned to that and turned this to make the machines work. It was very Dickensian in a lot of ways.
But Singers refused to put any money in to get modernised.
As their profits started to decline, Singers were forced to come up with a plan.
Singers were dropping like a stone, and so what they first tried to do was economise, and what they did is they competed with each other. They competed factory to factory, so they would get a factory, say in South America, to price up a sewing machine, and they would get Kilbowie to price up a sewing machine, or Elizabethport, or one of the other factories around the world, and they would get them to compete with themselves, which of course is a disaster. They should have been competing with the competition.
The only way that we could make a profit at Clydebank was to make it cheaper. So that was one of my jobs, trying to make the things cheaper. And if you walked through the factory, the eyes were on you all the time in case you were coming to cut their wages.
To complicate matters further, the 60s brought new, affordable fashion stores to the British High Street.
In the 60s in particular had the boutique. Fashion just underwent a huge revolution. It was a sort of meeting of youth culture and subculture that no one could have predicted. And it made this very exciting, affordable fashion, so people were less likely to want to actually go home and make their own clothes. So they weren't selling as many sewing machines, but they were still maintaining this huge sort of retail presence in the high street, and the combination of the two just, it could not be supported for any length of time.
So now you had a massive behemoth, you had a giant, incredibly expensive to run. Every day the orders were getting less and less and less, and the writing's really on the wall.
Desperate to keep the Clydebank factory afloat, the company closed entire departments and laid off hundreds of workers.
By the 1970s, you get a dramatic decrease in the number of jobs that Singer are providing. So from a high in 1911 of something like 13,000 workers, by 1973 it's only a few thousand.
People talk, workers are no daft, contrary to what management think, and they see the signs. It was only a matter of time.
In June 1980, after years of unrest and workers' strikes, Singers in Clydebank closed its doors for the final time.
Closed Singer's sewing machine factory was based on the company's falling share in the world's markets and industry's need to make a profit to exist. And the closing of Clydebank was simply the corporate amputation of the largest loss-making limb in the organisation.
It's a bitter blow to Clydebank. 1,800 jobs have been lost in the town this year already, and unemployment has increased by 45% since 1974.
I found out by reading the paper. I think everybody was devastated in Clydebank. You know, that such a big company was actually leaving for good.
Nobody ever thought that Singer would close because it had been so much a part of our lives.
There was no any big going away parties or anything like that as they have nowadays, you know. That was it, and I went down the stair as normal and out and away back up the road, you know.
It had been a devastating decade for Clydebank. John Brown's shipyards built the last ship on the site in 1972.
Well, Clydebank, I mean, it had a sort of double whammy because they lost two industries. They lost shipbuilding and sewing machines.
It was just devastation.
It became a different place. There's nothing that could take the place of these big engineering places.
Yeah, it was like a ghost town, as if somebody had hit Clydebank with a hammer. And all the other things that you did in Singers, you know, with all your friends, like dancing, and that was a blow.
So this is the Titan crane, which is the kind of last symbol of the John Brown shipyards, which used to be here. Now, the crane itself is pretty much the only lasting remnant of the shipyards. It feels kind of sad that there was so much history and so many people worked here, and there's such a pride, and there still is such a pride in the shipyards and Clyde built and being from Clydebank and all that. And it was a bit sad that, you know, we didn't get to see Clydebank at its most bustling and its most proud, you know.
Former workers of Singer's Clydebank factory meet regularly to share their memories.
I had gone away for a while and then came back into Singer, and when I came back I thought, oh, now this is not what it was before. You know, there was a different atmosphere in the whole place, because I think people were beginning to get a bit anxious.
I mean, there definitely was a sense of, you know, foreboding.
Doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom, exactly.
Yeah.
But the clock came down before they closed the place. We never knew anything about it beforehand. You know, it hadn't been publicised or anything. It just started one working day and started taking it to bits. And in those days, in the factory, if I had a quiet time, I would write wee poems about the people in the factory. Mm-hmm. And I wrote this one after they started taking the clock down, called Who Done It? I'd like to find the culprit, the one who'll take the blame, who stole the Singer clock away and covered us with shame. An edifice that filled the sky, a credit to the town. I'd like to find the idiot who had our clock pulled down. Our councillors were silent. They hadn't much to say. We never heard a whisper when the clock was taken away. So instead of being world-renowned, as far as I can see, all we've got left are photos of where the clock should be. Aye, the Yanks, they must be laughing even to this very day, for they took the workings of our clock to the old US away. So now I sit and daydream, help me put 'em in the dock, the empty-headed bampot who gave away our clock.
The Singer machines, made in Clydebank, are not just relics of the past.
The Kilbarry machines are really very straightforward to service. But what we do have to do at this age is a lot of cleaning to get dirty, sticky oil from what are meant to be moving, spinning parts.
In a small industrial estate in Southampton, a charity called Tools for Self-Reliance breathes new life into old sewing machines. Retired school teacher Alan has been volunteering here for 10 years.
What we have in here is a Singer 99. It's about 1920 when it was made. These machines are really astounding because of the skill that was used in making this sewing head. This sewing head is the bit that we need to make sure works perfectly, because of course when it does, you can carry on sewing and sewing and sewing and sewing. The Singer sewing machine really comes from a time when the phrase throwaway culture hadn't been invented at all. Some of the earliest ones we see are probably 1912, 1913. Sometimes when we open up the case, we find some very, very personal stories. And there's one just here that's turned up from Rosemary in the United Kingdom. And she says, I'm now 55 years old and have learnt to sew on this machine, which was my mother's. Wonderful.
The charity refurbishes over 300 manual Singer sewing machines a year.
By the time they've been taken apart, oiled, cleaned, put back together, they will be as good as new. So really this is the last stages to make sure that it works and works and works and works and works and doesn't fail. And really that's a compliment to the designers of that machine, because that is 98 years old, a wonderful piece of engineering. My job is done. The joke is, of course, is when you finish, there shouldn't be any parts left in the tin lid.
Once packed, the sewing machines are shipped to their destination 3,000 miles away, to Accra in Ghana. The charity Street Girls Aid trains women on the refurbished sewing machines.
When I first came, it was very difficult because I didn't know how to cut, how to use the machine. After the training, I find it very easy to do everything, and I'm very happy.
I am interested in fashion, and I preferred to be a seamstress, so I chose the sewing center.
I find it very interesting how you cut and then you join pieces and it becomes something beautiful. It's very nice.
Along with sewing, the girls also learn how to design clothes from scratch.
The machines that we use are Singer machines. So it doesn't matter if the machines are old or not. The machines that they bring are very durable. The ones we have on the market are sometimes very low quality. So we are very grateful for these machines because they are very strong. Most of the girls sewing prefer the hand machine and not the electric one.
Yes, this one is best. This one you're not going to pay any electricity bills.
In Ghana, sewing is a profession. You choose to do it because you earn more money in it. It's not just a hobby.
For these girls too, they can sew and then people will bring their cloth, then they sew it for them. So sewing is a very big business in Ghana.
At the end of the year-long training course, the girls get to take the machine with them.
It carries them through the training, and when they graduate, they take it to start their business. They see the opportunity Once you have your sewing machine, you can start just in front of your shop, or you can even go around and do people's things for them. So they see that as very easy to start their business.
Over 20 girls graduate from the course every year.
Yes, because you can't sew anything without a machine. So having a sewing machine is going to change my life big time.
When I leave this center, I'm getting my own business so that I can work on my own.
I'll become a good and professional and quality seamstress. So I'll own my own shop.
I love it if I sew for someone and I see the person worried, and then you are just good to go.
It was just all such good fun when I think back on it.
Just the camaraderie, just the carry on that went on. It was just lovely, you know.
Oh, you're looking brilliant.
Look how young you are in that.
I know.
My goodness. And that was us in our heyday, Maureen.
Do you remember where that was taken?
That's Blackpool, when we went with some of the girls in the flat.
I remember that, yeah.
After that.
I mean, we really are young there.
Could not, huh?
Life wasn't as complicated then as it is now.
And that's the Singer magazine.
Oh my goodness, are they years ago?
1959.
1959?
I know. Vicky said, imagine keeping a magazine all these years.
I know.
And I says, it was vanity because I'm on the front of it.
That's never you.
It is.
So it is, Anna. Oh my goodness. I would have held on to it as well if I was in it. And you were a lady in waiting?
I was a maid of honour.
Oh, you're a maid of honour? Is that better than a lady in waiting?
Yes. Anyway, happy memories.
Really nice. You know, I wouldn't have lasted in that place if Anna hadn't been there.
Oh.
Quite honestly. Yeah, wouldn't it? But I think the company makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. You made so many friends, didn't you?
Oh, we did, oh my goodness. Well, it's nice to look back, you know, to when we were that age and remember the things that we did, you know, and that we did enjoy life at that age.
But I'm just ashamed to say I never had a Singer sewing machine.
Singer was such a community of people who worked hard and enjoyed the simple things.
Singers was the place, you know. I was happy when I was at my work.
You couldn't go 20 yards without running into people you knew.
You got to know everybody, and they got to know you.
The good friendships and good to work with and that, you know. It was absolutely tremendous.